I had the pleasure of going to a car show recently and saw this red convertible. People triumphed at the Triumph, which is part of British vintage history, a celebration of a red sport utility that boasted a leather interior that was a kind of light yellow. The car was by no means inferior. It boasted 6 cylinders, unlike its other challengers in the market then, that subsequently took it up a notch with a V8 engine. This red memory celebrates the proud history of a long tradition of next-generation preoccupations with the need for speed and luxury, and just like Germany, British creations hold their own in European vintage, just like Ford could afford to do. It's a separate piece of a worldwide puzzle that belongs to the European world, but was sold around the world just like the others. Good day, you petrol heads. Welcome to a journey through time where the smell of gasoline and the roar of engines take us back to an era of pure automotive bliss. Today we're diving headfirst into a world of pure driving joy, a world where every twist and turn of the road brings a new thrill, a world where the wind whips through your hair and the sun kisses your face as you drive through picturesque landscapes. The engine roars with unbridled power, echoing the spirit of freedom and adventure, and the open road stretches out before you like a siren's call, beckoning you to explore the unknown. That's right, we're talking Triumph Convertibles, the epitome of classic British motoring. Now, some people might call them vintage, but I prefer timeless. These cars have a charm that transcends generations. These cars aren't just relics of a bygone era, they're living, breathing icons of automotive history. Each one a masterpiece of design and engineering, each one a testament to British engineering at its finest, showcasing the ingenuity and craftsmanship of a bygone era. We're talking about cars that ooze character, cars that have a soul, cars that beg to be driven, that demand your attention and respect, cars that make you feel like you've just escaped from a bank heist, with adrenaline pumping through your veins. Even if you're just popping down to the shops for a pint of milk, the thrill is always there. Over the next few chapters, we'll be taking a deep dive into some of the most iconic Triumph convertibles ever produced, exploring their unique stories, from the early pioneers to the late bloomers, each with its own tale to tell, exploring what made them so special and why they continue to capture the hearts of enthusiasts around the world. We'll look at the passion they ignite. We'll delve into their design, their performance, and the sheer joy they bring to their drivers, and of course their quirks. Because let's face it, what's a British sports car without a few quirks? It's these little idiosyncrasies that make them endearing. Because let's face it, what's a British sports car without a few quirks? These quirks are part of their charm. So, buckle up, adjust your driving gloves, and prepare yourself for an unforgettable journey, and get ready for a thrilling ride through the history of Triumph Convertibles. It's a ride filled with nostalgia, excitement, and a touch of British elegance. It's going to be a bumpy one, but trust me, it'll be worth it. So let's hit the road and explore the legends of Triumph Convertibles together. Picture this. It's the early 1950s. The world is still shaking off the dust of World War II, and life is slowly returning to a semblance of normalcy. Britain is still recovering from the war, rationing is in full swing, and the average car looks like it was designed by a committee of accountants. The streets are filled with boxy, uninspiring vehicles that seem to reflect the somber mood of the time. Drab, dreary, and about as exciting as a wet weekend in Scunthorpe. The automotive landscape is a sea of monotony, with nothing to quicken the pulse or stir the soul. But amidst this sea of automotive mediocrity, a beacon of hope emerges, the Triumph TR2. This car was not just another vehicle, it was a statement, a bold declaration that driving could be thrilling again. The TR2 was a game-changer. It was a breath of fresh air in a market suffocating under the weight of practicality and austerity. It was a car that dared to be different, a car that said, sod the sensible shoes, let's have some fun. With its low-slung body and sporty demeanour, it was a car that invited you to take the long way home. With its sleek aerodynamic body, it looked like it was going 100 miles an hour standing still. And trust me, it wasn't afraid to stretch its legs on the open road. The design was not just for show, it was built for speed and agility. Under the hood, you'll find a feisty little four-cylinder engine that produces a frankly astonishing, for the time, 90 horsepower. This engine was the heart of the TR2, giving it the power to match its sporty looks. That might not sound like much today, but back then it was enough to give even the most jaded driver a serious adrenaline rush. The TR2 was all about the driving experience, making every journey an adventure. This car was light, nimble, and most importantly, it was affordable, making it the perfect choice for enthusiasts on a budget. It democratized the sports car experience, bringing it within reach of the average driver. The TR2 wasn't just a pretty face, though. It had the performance to back up its looks, proving itself on the racetrack and in rallies. It was a capable sports car that could hold its own on the track, racking up victories in rallies and races around the world. Its success on the track only added to its allure, making it a legend in its own time. It quickly gained a reputation for being both stylish and sporty, setting the stage for Triumph's future success in the sports car market. The TR2 was more than just a car, it was a revolution on wheels, a symbol of a new era of driving excitement. Now let's talk about the way this car looks, because frankly it's a bit of a stunner. The TR2's design is a masterclass in simplicity. It's got curves in all the right places, and it's got an aggressive stance that just screams, "Get in and drive me." You won't find any unnecessary frills or gimmicks here, just pure, unadulterated automotive sculpture. The TR2's most distinctive feature has to be its grille. It's big, it's bold, and it's got more chrome than a 1950s diner. Some might say it's a bit much, but I say it's perfect. It's a statement, a declaration of intent. This car isn't afraid to be noticed. And then there's the interior. Spartan, yes, but also surprisingly comfortable. The seats are supportive, the gauges are easy to read, and there's just enough room for you and a willing passenger. Of course, being a British sports car of the era, there's always a chance you might get a bit damp if the heavens open, but that's all part of the charm, isn't it? The TR2's design is a perfect example of form following function. Every element serves a purpose, and the overall effect is one of timeless elegance. It's a car that looks just as good today as it did when it first rolled off the production line over 70 years ago. Alright, enough about the looks, let's talk about what really matters, how this thing drives. The Triumph TR2 is more than just a pretty face, it's a machine built for the open road, designed to deliver an exhilarating driving experience. Now, I won't lie to you, the TR2 isn't exactly a powerhouse by modern standards. With its 2.0-litre engine producing around 90 horsepower, it might seem modest today, but remember, this car was built in a time when men were men, and horsepower figures were more like suggestions than actual measurements. Back then, it was all about the driving experience, the connection between man and machine. Despite its modest output, the TR2 feels surprisingly quick on its feet. The lightweight construction and nimble chassis make it feel alive, eager to respond to every input. The engine is eager to rev, delivering a satisfying growl as you push it through the gears, and the 4-speed gearbox, though a bit notchy by today's standards, is precise and rewarding to use. Each shift feels like a deliberate action, adding to the sense of involvement. You really feel connected to the car, which is something that's often missing in modern sports cars. The steering is direct, and you can feel every nuance of the road surface through the wheel. The TR2's handling is a revelation. It's light, nimble, and surprisingly forgiving, allowing you to push it to its limits with confidence. The suspension setup, though simple, works wonders in keeping the car composed through corners. You can chuck it into corners with reckless abandon, and it'll respond with a playful wiggle of its tail before gripping on and rocketing you out the other side. It's a car that rewards a spirited driving style, encouraging you to explore its limits and enjoy the journey. And it's an absolute blast to drive on a twisty back road. The TR2 comes alive on these roads, making every drive an adventure. Of course, the TR2 isn't without its quirks. These little idiosyncrasies are part of what gives the car its unique character. The brakes, for instance, are best described as adequate, requiring a firm foot and some anticipation. And the ride can be a bit, shall we say, firm over rough surfaces. It's not the most comfortable car, but that's not the point. But that's all part of the charm, isn't it? These quirks remind you that you're driving a piece of history, a car with a soul. It's a reminder that you're driving a car with character, a car that demands your attention and rewards you with an unforgettable driving experience. Every drive in the TR2 is a journey back in time, a celebration of the golden age of motoring, a car that demands your attention and rewards you with an unforgettable driving experience. It's not just about getting from point A to point B, it's about the thrill of the drive, the joy of the journey, and the memories you create along the way. The TR2 wasn't just a sports car, it was a revolution. It proved that you didn't need a bottomless pit of money to experience the joys of open-top motoring. It was a car for the everyman. A car that made you feel like you could conquer the world, one winding road at a time. Its success put Triumph firmly on the map as a builder of desirable and affordable sports cars. It paved the way for a whole lineage of iconic models, like the TR3, the Spitfire, and of course the legendary TR6. The TR2 was, in many ways, the car that started it all. Today, the TR2 is a highly sought-after classic, and for good reason. It's a reminder of a simpler time, a time when cars were built for the pure joy of driving. They don't make them like this anymore, and that's a damn shame. So there you have it, the Triumph TR2, a car that's as charming as it is capable, as stylish as it is sporty. It's a true icon of British motoring and a car that deserves to be celebrated. Now, after the roaring success of the TR2, you'd think Triumph would rest on their laurels, wouldn't you? Crack open a few bottles of warm beer, pat themselves on the back and call it a day. But no, not these mad lads. They went back to the drawing board, pencils sharpened and slide rules at the ready, determined to make a good car even better. And what they came up with was the Triumph TR3. Launched in 1955, the TR3 was essentially an evolution of the TR2, but with a few key improvements that made it even more appealing to driving enthusiasts. Think of it as the TR2's slightly more sophisticated older brother, the one who went to university but still knows how to have a good time. The most obvious change was the new front grille. Gone was the toothy grin of the TR2, replaced by a wider, more integrated design that gave the car a more modern and aggressive look. It was still distinctly a TR, but with a touch of added sophistication. But the improvements weren't just skin deep. Underneath that sculpted bodywork, the TR3 boasted a more powerful engine, a revised suspension, and a host of other refinements that transformed it into a truly formidable sports car. This was a car that meant business. Now let's talk about what's under the bonnet, because this is where the TR3 really starts to shine. While the TR2 made do with a sprightly 90 horsepower, the TR3 upped the ante with a gutsier 100 horsepower, courtesy of a larger 2-litre engine. That might not sound like a huge increase, but trust me, it made all the difference. With more power on tap, the TR3 could hit 60 miles per hour in a shade over 10 seconds. Now, I know what you're thinking. 10 seconds? My grandmother's mobility scooter can do better than that. But remember, this was the 1950s, a time when speed limits were more like suggestions, and overtaking maneuvers were a test of nerves and faith. But the TR3 wasn't just about straight-line speed, it was also a surprisingly capable handler, thanks to its independent front suspension and a revised rear axle. It could tackle corners with confidence and composure, making it a joy to drive on winding country roads. And let's not forget the sound. Oh, that glorious sound. The TR3's engine note is a thing of beauty. A throaty roar that sends shivers down your spine and makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. It's the sound of pure, unadulterated driving pleasure. So you've heard of the TR2 and TR3, the bruisers of the Triumph family. Now let's talk about their sprightly younger sibling, the Spitfire. Picture this. It's 1962, the Beatles are about to take the world by storm, and Triumph unveils this little roadster. Now under that bonnet you wouldn't find some monstrous V8. Oh no, the Spitfire was far too clever for that. It had a series of small, peppy four-cylinder engines starting with a 1.1 litre and eventually growing to a 1.5 litre. Not exactly going to set your hair on fire, some might say. But they'd be wrong. These little engines were surprisingly nippy, especially in the lighter early models. You see, the Spitfire was all about balance, about the joy of a perfectly weighted rear-wheel drive and a responsive engine. It was never about brute force, but about the art of the corner, the thrill of a winding road. In other words, it was a proper driver's car, a roadster that made you feel alive. Now let's talk about the way this thing looks, because frankly, it's a stunner. Designed by the legendary Giovanni Michelotti, the man responsible for some of the most beautiful cars ever made, the Spitfire is a timeless classic. Those curves, that low-slung profile, is enough to make a grown man weep. And unlike some of the more, shall we say, delicate British sports cars of the time, the Spitfire was actually quite robust. It had a reputation for reliability, which was more than could be said for some of its Italian counterparts. So, you could enjoy those winding country roads without worrying about your car dissolving into a pile of rust and Lucas electrical gremlins. The Spitfire remained in production for almost 2 decades, a testament to its enduring appeal. And even today, these little roadsters are still sought after by enthusiasts all over the world. Why? Because they represent a simpler time. A time when driving was about more than just getting from A to B. It was about the wind in your hair, the sun on your face, and the feeling of pure, unadulterated joy. The Spitfire was more than just a car, it was a statement. It said, "I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way." Now, some might call the Stag a bit of a gamble. A 4-seater convertible with a V8 engine? Sounds like a recipe for disaster, a bit like trying to make a cuppa in a hurricane. But I'll give Triumph this: they were never short on ambition. They wanted to create a luxury sports car that could rival the likes of Mercedes. And they weren't afraid to take a few risks to do it. Did it pay off? Well, that's debatable. Now, let's talk about that V8 engine, shall we? Designed by Triumph themselves, it was meant to be a masterpiece of British engineering. A powerful yet refined heart for this luxurious beast. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. The engine was plagued with problems, mainly due to cooling issues. It was like trying to keep a cool head in a sauna while wearing a tweed suit. Triumph marketed the Stag as a grand tourer, a car that could whisk you across continents in comfort and style. And in fairness, it could. When it wasn't broken down by the side of the road, that is. The Stag was actually quite spacious for a sports car, with comfortable seats and a decent-sized boot. You could probably fit a couple of suitcases and a picnic basket in there, but good luck fitting James May's ego. The Triumph Stag, a car that promised so much yet ultimately delivered a mixed bag. It was stylish, luxurious, and had a certain swagger that few cars could match. But it was also unreliable, expensive to maintain, and let's be honest, a bit of a gamble. It's like going on a date with a beautiful but slightly unhinged supermodel. You know it's probably going to end in tears, but you can't help but be seduced by the potential. Despite its flaws, the Stag remains an icon of British motoring. It's a reminder that even the best-laid plans can go awry, and that sometimes the most beautiful things are also the most fragile. But hey, at least it wasn't another boring saloon car, right? Triumph TR6. After the somewhat experimental and, let's be honest, slightly disastrous Stag, Triumph decided to go back to their roots with the TR6. And thank heavens they did. This was a proper sports car, a return to form for the Triumph brand. It was like ditching that unreliable girlfriend and going back to your ex who, despite being a bit rough around the edges, always knew how to have a good time. Now, at first glance, you might mistake the TR6 for its predecessor, the TR5, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. Triumph, in their infinite wisdom, decided to stick with the same basic chassis and design. But don't be fooled, this wasn't just a lazy rehash. They may have kept the same dress, but they gave it a whole new attitude. The TR6 was a hit, selling over 90,000 units worldwide. It was particularly popular in America, where its blend of classic British charm and affordable performance proved irresistible. It was like the Beatles of the car world, conquering hearts and minds on both sides of the Atlantic. Sadly, all good things must come to an end. Production of the TR6 ceased in 1976, marking the end of an era for Triumph. It was like the final curtain call for a legendary rock band, leaving fans wanting more. Well, there you have it, a whirlwind tour through the history of Triumph convertibles. From the humble beginnings of the TR2 to the flawed brilliance of the Stag and the back-to-basics brilliance of the TR6, it's been a bumpy ride, much like a lap around the Top Gear test track with Hammond at the wheel. These cars weren't just machines, they were symbols of freedom, style, and a certain British eccentricity. They were cars that made you feel alive, that made you want to get out there and grab life by the scruff of the neck. And in today's world of sensible SUVs and soulless electric cars, that's something worth remembering. So, thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of Triumph convertibles. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more vintage car content. See you next time as we continue to explore the fascinating world of classic automobiles.
Join me as I take on the challenge of finding the most stunning Triumph convertibles and see if they really are the epitome of vintage cars. Triumph convertibles are a classic symbol of vintage car culture, evoking a sense of nostalgia and sophistication that's hard to match. There's something undeniably special about these beautifully crafted vehicles that has captured the hearts of car enthusiasts around the world. When it comes to preserving vintage cars like the Triumph convertibles, however, modern-day enthusiasts face a significant challenge. One of the biggest hurdles is finding replacement parts, which can be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Add to that the fact that many of these parts are no longer in production, and you've got a real problem on your hands. The irony is that these cars were built to last, but their very durability can make them harder to restore and maintain. Restoration is a labor of love that requires a deep understanding of the car's mechanics and a willingness to get your hands dirty. It's not just about slapping on a new coat of paint and calling it a day, it's about meticulously rebuilding each component to its former glory. And even then, there's always the risk of something going wrong, like a faulty electrical system or a seized engine. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the world of Triumph convertibles. If you're as passionate about these cars as I am, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check out our next video.